colonial project is fundamentally racist. It's an act of racism. You have superiority of the white race over the non-white races. And we talked about it in the context of Europe and Africa. You can apply it in the context of the US and the European natives of the US versus the Native Americans in the US. You can also apply it in India and in the rest of Asia, wherever the colonial project went. Making stuff up is the most prominent feature of colonialism. They fabricate reality. And they impose that reality onto us. They do it by 3 steps. First, they create a gulf in the culture. Now, what's a gulf? It's not about something you artificially create, it's about how you describe what exists. I have culture, you don't, in many different words. Then you exploit it for the benefit of the colonized. And once you've done that, you use those differences to make it an absolute fact that I have culture and you don't. Right? And once you've gotten here, you then ingrain in your actions, in your institutions, this is the reality. I have culture, you don't. I have society, you don't. I am a human, you are an animal. Now, once you encode that in society and societal institutions, you start encoding it into laws. Anyone heard about voting in the US? And specifically, a black man was worth, if I remember correctly, half of a white man. This is post-slavery society in the US, before the vote was rolled out to African Americans. It's the same. Now, a racist describes his victims as incomprehensible, impenetrable, mysterious, strange, disturbing. Again, there aren't enough words in the thesaurus, so we end up repeating them over and over again. But we do so in the context of this presentation only because the colonized literature does the same. They also use all of these words. We haven't gone to the thesaurus looking, we looked at their texts and started picking. So it happens over and over and over and over again. Now, if we look at these 3 authors and start summarizing, what we see is the colonizer spent a lot of time, money, and effort establishing this narrative. It wasn't a side project, it wasn't a small project, it was a central feature because it justified the act of colonization to themselves and their people and assuaged their guilt. And as part of this, he took every possible measure to elevate his own position and to denigrate the position of the colonized. He constructed the colonized in every country that they went as barbaric and uncivilized, as animals. And he created this dialectical relationship. And from there, he continued to portray, again, the European colonizers, that they're the ones bringing civilization because they're the only ones that are civilized. In fact, they're the only ones who could conceive of the idea of civilization. And then they provide the intellectual and scholarly rationale for that continued colonization. And then lastly, when they've left, not only do they continue to fund the institutions that they left, but the people that they left behind continue to support those institutions over the course of their lifetimes. And then they educate others and bring them in. And so it perpetuates generation after generation after generation. And so we end up where we are today, where our intellectuals are perpetuating the violent documentation of myth established as fact in our own society. But Césaire, Fernand, and Memy, we're talking about this in the context of Africa. But when we go through this, each of us individually can draw the parallels for ourselves with what we see here.